So this is an interesting topic for a video. This idea of are movies too long nowadays has been an idea, or I guess a thought, that's been on my mind for a little bit now. And especially since this year has had 2 to 3 films that I actually think do not need to be as long as they are. But this is just my opinion. Everybody's opinion is subjective, film is subjective, so obviously the runtime of a film, and do you think a film is too long or too short, it really depends on the overall enjoyment of a film. If you really enjoy a movie that's 3 hours, you probably won't feel the 3-hour runtime. But if somebody didn't enjoy that said film that was 3 hours, they're probably going to feel every single second of that film's runtime. So I would listen to your thoughts down below. What is your opinion on this broad topic? Are films too long nowadays? So without further ado, let's get into it. So before I give you guys my thoughts on are films too long, I think it's going to be best to give you guys a brief history on actually film runtime. Back when films were kind of being forged, movies were between 5 seconds to about 3 minutes long. That was the average runtime of a film. They were silent, they in black and white, and they were super quick and simple. Normally because films were kind of just used as a quick distraction, not really a form of an art form like it is nowadays, but that was the runtime of movies. And then they started becoming 40 minutes to an hour to 90 minutes. As film became more popular, films became longer. Then they reached the 2-hour mark, 2.5-hour mark, and as films became color and sound, they started to become 3 hours, 4 hours, sometimes 4.5 hours. Films were becoming longer before they were becoming shorter. And then after a good period, films, depend on the genre, kind of was put into a certain runtime template, right? Comedies and rom-coms are more importantly 90 to 2 hours long. Action films are between 2.5 hours to 2 hours. Comic book superhero films are roughly around 2 hours to 2.5 hours. And musicals are roughly around from 2.5 hours to sometimes even 3 hours long. So those were kind of the general runtime of movies. And nowadays, films are kind of depending on the runtime. Movies you won't think are nearly 3 hours long are becoming 3 hours long. Or films you don't think is under 2 hours are under 2 hours. And this is really where the problem kind of lies. I saw 2 movies pretty recently in this year that I did not expect to feel the runtime that I did, and they did not need to be as long as they were. Jurassic World Dominion and Elvis. Both films share very similar runtimes, and both films I could feel the runtime immensely. First up, Jurassic World Dominion. Jurassic World Dominion was a fine movie. It had some fun characters, it was cool seeing the old gang back together, some fun dino sequences. But the runtime I felt 100%. The film felt long, and it was long. Elvis, a film I thought was fine. Austin Butler gives a fantastic performance as Elvis, and Baz Luhrmann absolutely brought his 100% and his A game to make the most crazy, visually stunning film that he could possibly make. But after like the maybe hour and a half, after like the first main concert in Vegas, I started to feel this movie's runtime. And after that big massive concert that I think would have been a great way to kind of wrap things up, the film still had so much more to do. And I understand that Baz Luhrmann was trying to fit so much of Elvis's story into one film, but just the template of the film and the way the film was made, the way the film was put together, because the film is so crazy and sporadic and fast editing and fast moving for most of the film kind of becomes a headache to watch for nearly 3 hours long. But then we get the opposite. Thor: Love and Thunder was just under 2 hours, and I felt like there was so much more movie that I needed to experience the full picture. Probably because there's a 4-hour cut logged somewhere in the vaults, but that's completely besides the point. That film easily could have been 2 hours and 15 to 2.5 hours to tell its story more coherently. And that's a problem. Films that don't need to be 2.5 hours, like Jurassic World Dominion, like Elvis, are being 2.5 hours. Movies that need to be longer to flesh out more of its characters and story, like Thor: Love and Thunder, are just squeezing down to 2 hours long. Then there's films that just lay into the perfect runtime. Top Gun Maverick, I heard a lot of people say they didn't need the relationship stuff or they didn't need the romance. That could have been cut out to just make a perfect 2-hour movie. I think this film is perfect as it is. It's well made, it's fun, it's entertaining, it's emotional, it has heart, it has great playing and action sequences, and the pacing was perfect. And that's really the key, pacing and caring about the story. The Lord of the Rings trilogy is my favorite set of films of all time. I absolutely adore those films. And you're going to get long films, it depends what you watch. The theatrical cuts range from 3 hours to 3.5 hours. The extended cuts range from 3.5 hours to 4.5 hours. You're going to get long films no matter what version you watch. But because I love the world, characters, and I'm invested, I don't ever really feel the film's runtime. But I bet you if I showed somebody Lord of the Rings for the very first time that didn't really care for the films that much, I bet after the movie they would look over and tell me, I felt the runtime because I wasn't that invested. Elvis and Jurassic World are not bad movies by any stretch of the imagination, but I lost investment halfway through for each movie's around the 90-minute mark. And I'm not saying those films needed to be 90 minutes, hell no, they needed to be longer movies to tell their story. But I think the pacing would have helped those movies significantly, and also me caring a bit more. I saw Elvis with my sister. She's an absolute massive Elvis fan, and I asked her by the end of the movie, did you feel that the film dragged a bit towards the end? And she told me no. Why? It's not because the movie's pacing was brilliant, because it wasn't. The film had major pacing problems, but because she was invested so very much into the story that Baz Luhrmann was telling that she never even thought to check her watch and be like, I've been here for 2.5 hours. But she did feel the runtime of Jurassic World Dominion. Why? Because she was probably checking her watch, because she probably didn't really care about the story that the filmmakers were trying to tell. I think it's very key for pacing to be super key in film. If you have a long film but your pacing is superb, I will not be complaining. The Batman is a big, massive point of this. I absolutely love that film. It's one of my favorite films of the year and one of my favorite superhero films in a very long time. The film is nearly 3 hours long, but besides maybe the last 5 minutes of the film, I did not feel the nearly 3-hour runtime. Why? Well, A, I was very invested in the film and wanting to know where the film was going to end up. The film, for the most part, had excellent pacing and timing. The film moved at a very brisk and fast pace, but not too fast where you just miss everything. I think that's Baz Luhrmann's Elvis's main problem for me personally. The film's pacing and editing are completely different. The film's pacing is quite poor. The film feels long and the film drags. The film has sequences or moments that could have either been shortened or cut to make the pacing of the film that much better. But the editing is so fast and quick on its feet that the film basically tricks you in being like, look, we're fast paced, look, we're moving at a very good pace, even though it's not. Jurassic World has its same problem. There's sequences, moments that could have either been cut completely or shortened. And I'm thinking we're getting back to the time where deleted scenes are becoming very rare. Back in like the 30s and 40s, when films were being long and epic, your 10 Commandments, your Gone with the Wind, your Ben-Hurs, deleted scenes weren't really that common. Everything that was shot for a film was in the movie, and that's why a lot of those older films are so long. And then we got to there being tons of deleted scenes and cutting sequences to make the film's pacing better. Even if the scene's really cool, you might not need it because of the pacing. But I feel like with Jurassic World Dominion, with Elvis, that there's sequences that could have been put as deleted scenes or make extended cuts. I know so many people that would have been happy to see an Elvis extended cut. Chop 10 to 15 minutes of the film and you would have got a better movie because the pacing would have been better. Pacing is key if you want your film to succeed. Even if you have the best acting, the best direction, the best writing, the best cinematography, if your film feels long and your film drags, you are going to have a problem, and people are going to get bored, and people are going to get bored quick. So, overall, are movies too long? It really depends on the person. Are you invested in the story? Are you invested in the characters? If you are, even if the film doesn't really have that great pacing, like Elvis, like Jurassic World Dominion, I think you'll be fine. But if you're not that invested, like I wasn't with Jurassic World or Elvis, you'll feel the pacing of the film. But then there's also films that need longer runtimes, like Love and Thunder, that after the film you just kind of feel like, I felt like I was missing something there. Overall, this is just completely subjective. I would love to know your guys' thoughts down below. Are movies nowadays too long? Should movies be tighter? And should pacing of films be better? I'd love to know your guys' thoughts down in the comment section below. While you're at it, be sure to like this video, click that subscribe button, hit that post notification bell so you guys never miss when I upload another video. While you're at it, be sure to check out my Instagram at Daniel.movies, my Twitter at DanielMovies1, and my Letterboxd at SuperFilms. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, keep talking movies.